Hello and welcome to the Feeling Lighter podcast. I'm Coach Tyler. Here with me, as always, is Dr. Lisa.
Hola.
Is it a giggly episode? I feel like, every once in a while we
Yep.
get a little giggly in the start of an episode
We're
and
on
we
number
just carry it
3,
through.
so for the day,
Well,
so I'm
that
giggly.
that's good because I feel like lightheartedness,
Yeah.
kindness are things that we all need a lot more of in our lives,
100%.
right? I mean, come on. Like, how are we going to just live our whole lives just feeling so angry and guilty and shameful and all these different things that come through us? And
Yeah.
that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about cultivating a better sense of connection with our bodies, more kindness, more self-love, and I'm really excited about that. So our guest today is Jess Fry. And Jess, I went to your social media and I pulled out some stuff that I'm going to refer to during our conversation. But the first one I wanted to ask you about was this thing that you wrote. Stop apologizing for your existence. Tell us about that.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think that such a foundation of the work I do is trying to cancel out the noise that we hear so much from society. All of these expectations that are placed, especially on women, to be smaller, thinner, quieter, more flexible and easier, less of a burden. We're taught all of those things from day one. And so much of the work that I do is helping women to get back to their authenticity and try to strip away some of those belief systems that have been conditioned in us for so long, and to stop apologizing for just being human. We don't have to apologize for having emotions. We don't have to apologize for taking up space. And that's such a huge piece of treating yourself and your body with kindness.
Ooh, women
Damn,
apologize.
we came in hot right there.
Yeah,
That
there's
was
like
good.
5 different things we need to talk about in that. Women apologize for everything,
Everything.
and I've definitely done it. But before we talk about that aspect, I need to know like how you got into this work where you focus on women primarily. You also have I think a love and a space for women who have different neurodivergencies and things of that nature. So I would love to hear like where that came from, what you do, and how you help these people, take up space and apologize less, for being human.
So I joke sometimes that my ideal client is just a younger version of me. I specialize in all of the things that I have struggled with, and I think there's such a beautiful blend of a professional expertise as well as a lived experience in being able to help people. And so I love working with women with ADHD and autism who have struggled with body image, struggled with eating disorders, because I am all of the above. So I've been you, I've experienced it, maybe through my own lens, but I think that just helps to provide a better perspective and more empathy. I didn't learn any of this when I was training to become a therapist, sadly. There's a huge lack of education in the mental health field around eating disorders, self-image, all of those kinds of things. I had to learn it as I went, and I actually stumbled upon a client who was 15 and she was struggling with a lot of body image distress and trying to restrict her food intake so that she could change the shape of her body. I was reaching out to colleagues who I knew specialized in these areas, and through doing some interventions and just some assessment work with her, recognized my own struggles. It was almost as if like every time she was saying yes to an assessment question, I was saying yes in my own head.
Wow.
And I think it's so telling that, and I think very validating for a lot of people, that even someone who went through over 6 years of schooling to work in mental health, I had no idea that I was struggling with a mental health disorder until it was right in my face. So a lot of these things that we deal with are so normalized, and our culture does a really great job at that. Not that it's a good thing; they're doing a great job at something really horrible, and I
Yeah.
think that that takes away from people really checking in with, "Ooh, is this doing me a disservice? Am I doing something healthy for myself?" So I'm trying to be the provider that I needed when I was struggling most.
Oh,
That's
thank you for
good.
doing that. I have
Yeah.
a daughter, actually two, that are probably both neurodivergent. One of them's pretty young still. And one thing I learned about the process of her getting that diagnosis was that girls can mask really well. And, boys, it's like you got ADHD, like, okay, we can see it in your actions and whatnot. But a girl will consciously change her behavior away from some of those intrinsic behaviors that you'd have with ADHD to mask it. And it's really hard to spot. So, again, I'm appreciative that you're doing this work and focusing on women as well.
Thank you for saying that. I also, the post that you just brought up, the stop apologizing, goes so beautifully with that masking ability because we are conditioned from very, very young to not stand out, to not be, too loud or too anything. So those neurodivergent tendencies often get criticized or judged. And so girls and women will be very quick to let me internalize that and shut it down and make sure I don't do that in front of people again. And that's what makes it a lot harder to get a diagnosis.
That makes sense. And I mean, I have my ideas, and we've talked about this before. But why do you think that is? For women, this this desire or this intrinsic knowing, like that I need to, make myself smaller. I need to apologize. I need to be less of who I am. What do you think has influenced that in our in our society? It's like a trick
Without getting on a
question.
soapbox, I think the summary of it is, the patriarchy really tries to keep women smaller and less strong, less important, less have less of a voice, so that male voices can shine. And women are also taught to appease men and work for that external validation of men. And so if we are quieter and we are all of these things that are smaller and more contained and more controlled, they have more power. But we also then are taught that we get more validation and we are looked at in a better light. But really, we're just self-abandoning by doing that.
Absolutely.
Man, that's
At
big.
the cost of our own power, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
How do you help women remove the guilt of taking up space? Right. I see this post and I think about how challenging it is for a lot of women I know to say, like, I'm going to go take some time for me and I'm going to go do this. And then, of course, life shows up and the kids have needs and this person has needs and the partner has needs. And then before they know it, they just said yes to everybody but themselves. So how do you help women first build the awareness that that's what's happening? And then second, build the confidence to actually show up and take up space?
I like that you started with first the awareness because that really is, without that part, there's no buy in. A lot of it, unfortunately, happens when clients come at the point of burnout or they're past burnout and they're at this state of desperation of, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am and I don't know what I need, but I feel awful. And so, depending on the client and where they're at, really meeting them in their pain points and gently, I use the word gentle, like be gentle with yourself. I'm gentle with them. I gently challenge. So much gentleness needs to be used there because there's such a lack of gentleness worldwide and in the messaging that got us to the place to begin with. We're taught to punish ourselves, to criticize ourselves, to always be working harder at doing better. And it comes from such an aggressive place. And so I try to meet that and match that with as much gentleness and self-compassion as I can. But that has to come with permission because a lot of women don't feel they have the permission to do that. And so normalizing that not only are we allowed to be gentle with ourselves, I think we're responsible to be gentle with ourselves. And so as much work as we need to do there and just building their empowerment and their normalization that that is an okay thing and it doesn't make you weaker. In fact, I think it only makes you stronger, is really where we start.
That's big. How do you help them communicate those needs to their partners? As you're saying this, I'm having lots of experiences in my head, asking for a friend, right? Where I'm thinking of how in my own life I've had a partner who wanted to take back time and like make space for herself, and the way that it was done was like very like stiff-armed, very masculine. It's almost like we've operated in this like masculine frame so much that it's like I'm fighting my bro for time, and then it just creates a disconnect, and then I feel like I've definitely failed there more times than I can count. Like, how do you help women communicate that in a way that really connects with their partners?
That's such a good question. I think my answer to any question around this is going to be starting with yourself. So, giving yourself the permission and being able to say, this is what I need, just to you. You don't have to communicate that or express it to anyone yet. Because if we can't say it to ourselves or identify it for ourselves, we're not going to be able to identify that or communicate it effectively to someone else. And so that's a lot of the work that I do in the therapy room is let's role play. Let's see what this feels like to say it out loud. Let's, play with the language and see what feels right. And then go to the other perspective and think about how that would feel to hear it from your partner, and how would you want to respond, and how would you want them to respond. And we kind of just do a lot of trial and error, but it does start with being able to say it and accept it for yourself and prioritize it as something that's important. So often when we ask for our needs to be met and they're not met, that can feel so defeating and debilitating that it keeps people from trying again. And so getting to a point of confidence and, being sure of yourself, no, these are my needs and I need you to meet them, is such an important piece, rather than kind of just starting with asking. It's really getting firm and comfortable with saying it to you first.
What if you don't know what your needs are?
Yeah, well, that's another big piece is identifying. And, a lot of women I work with, especially women who are moms, have lost a huge part of their identities. And a lot of women I work with who have given up years or decades of their lives to dieting and trying to change their bodies have also lost a huge part of their identities. And so trying to just get them back to who were you before this was your priority. And if you can't figure that out, who do you want to be? What's important to you now? Let's reevaluate what your values are, reevaluate what's important to you, and how you want to spend your time. What does that look like? And how can we fit that in to your reality? Because a lot of it can feel so far-fetched and far away, but if we can play with what matters to you, now let's use those things and try to fit them in to your life.
Guide you,
But I
yeah.
don't have time just to do that. I've got my family and my partner and this and that, and like, I just don't have time. But what do you do when someone is really deeply struggling to connect with themselves? Because it's one thing to say, like maybe you've gone through a period of your life and you have young children, and then they get older, and then you have more spaciousness and there's space for it. But it's like nobody's going to make this space for you, right? So how do you help people do that for themselves? I feel like it's such a missing part of self-connection, is just sitting and asking, like, who am I? Why am I this way? And what do I want? What do I need? What makes me feel loved and cared for?
Having realistic expectations. So there's never going to be a right time. And if you keep putting off your own work, your own investment in who you are, you're never going to get there. You're going to keep waiting. And also, it's not a sit down and do it all at once kind of activity. It's something we have to build upon over weeks, months, years. So allowing people to understand that this isn't a school project that they're getting graded on. They can't get in trouble. They can't get it wrong. And just allowing yourself that grace to work at it a little by little, and sitting with, things are uncomfortable now. You could continue with this familiarity, this familiar discomfort, and you can also tap into or jump into, head first, this unknown discomfort. They're both uncomfortable.
Still
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
They're both
Choose your
uncomfortable.
discomfort. I like
Yeah.
that. I want to come back to like the body image work that you do. You have this thing, 25 acts of body kindness, and I want to hear more about that and how this sort of movement has helped you heal, has helped clients heal. Like, what is that about? And I see it as another way of like you were just saying, sort of taking these small steps toward the thing, the values, knowing who you are now, reconnecting with yourself, as opposed to assuming you're going to sit down and, you know, do a course, take a quiz, and like, oh, I'm cured. So, what is this sort of step by step process that you have, and how's it been helping you and your clients?
Yeah, so the 25 acts of body kindness I started at the beginning of the year, and the intention there was to kind of drown out some of the noise that we hear around the 1st of January, where we're constantly fed messages and seeds are planted around changing or punishing or shrinking your body. And so I'm trying to meet that with you don't have to change anything. You're allowed to just show up and treat your body with kindness. I think so many of us fail to remember that that's an option. And again, I feel like also a responsibility. So when we're trying to cultivate more self-love and more self-acceptance, our bodies are part of that. We can't separate the two. This is the one that we got on this earth with. And so trying to be more of a team rather than being at war with one another really involves that mutual kindness. And our bodies show up for us every second of every day. They're constantly doing things behind the scenes. And we lose sight of that. We take that for granted. So being able to take some intention, take some time, and really put some kind of an effort in place to give back and to meet your body with the same kind of kindness that she shows up for you with is such a beautiful way of practicing something attainable in small steps. You can do it every day for 1 minute, for 5 minutes. And it's, again, that sounds a lot more attainable than this huge project of let me undo decades worth of of conditioning. So
I think this is big, and this really reflects something that we teach people at WeShape, which is I think the fitness industry's got everybody focused on change. I got to change. I got to change. I got to change the way I look. I got to change the way I show up.
Yeah.
All these different things. And change inherently, especially when it's fueled from insecurity and negativity, is like, I don't like myself.
Yeah.
I need to become something else, right? And we think that's motivating, and it can be for a period of time, but then it typically fades away and we just get stuck in self-judgment, self-criticism.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, what am I doing and what am I believing that allows me to show up for myself and take care of myself, right? Like, how do I show up to take care of my body as an act of self-care rather than as a punishment for what I ate the other day?
Yeah.
And this brings me to another post that I printed out here, which is this new year doesn't have to be about changing your body. Instead, let it be about changing the way you treat her. And I love that distinction because it really goes along with what you were talking about. What I'm just saying here is sometimes it's just how do we give people little acts that they can start practicing to start cultivating that self-worth through action.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, with you, like, what are the things that you find most successful in terms of getting women to start just taking some of those acts, even if they're little tiny ones?
Such a good question. My mind is going in 30 directions. Permission truly does come up so frequently, and I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that shame has been such a driving factor for us for such a long time that we forget there are other options. And so I'll often tell women, like, you've tried the shame route. You've been there, you've done that, and that led you here. And so we can go on a different spectrum. I see lots of things on a scale, especially working with neurodivergent women who, myself included, tend to see things very black and white, trying to help them maneuver up and down that scale. It's not just two options that you have, it's actually infinite. So
Yeah,
helping
that's
us to
scary
just,
though.
it is, did you say scary?
Yeah.
Very, yeah, yeah. All of it's scary. That's why so few people do this work. And so being able to just see yourself shifting from one end of that spectrum down just a little notch. It's kind of like exposure therapy and doing it again with compassion and grace and reminding yourself you can't get in trouble here. Like this, you can't do this wrong, and trying it, just dipping your toe in and then look around. See what happens, see how you feel. And if that's an enjoyable or even just a neutral experience, let's try to go a little bit further next time. And it's kind of just this really slow, gradual buildup where people become more assured and they become more safe, that they don't have to think about it anymore. They kind of just go more organically.
I love that you said that, and kind of akin to this like exposure therapy or chunking, right? Because as someone who has slowly worked on carving out more time for himself and self-care, and of course I'm a fit man in this world, and everybody's like, oh, of course you did this thing, right? But it's sometimes it gets hard to remember that there was a point where like I didn't do any of that
Yeah.
stuff, and it takes time to develop like self-worth and values and habits that are like I'm going to take care of myself because it's that important to me. And sometimes we give people ideas and they think about it, right? And it's just rumination of like I could do this and I should do that, and I'm like, oh, if I don't have an hour I might as well do nothing. You know what I mean? And it's like, how do we start helping people take those baby steps that give them the felt sense of the benefit of what it is that they're doing. Like go for like a 5-minute walk when you're feeling depressed and tell me you don't feel better
Right.
afterwards, right? Like it's creating those tools that give people a chance to change their state and show themselves some appreciation and kindness, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll add with the compassion that you don't always have to be doing something. It's also okay to rest. So you might, that 5-minute motivation might work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and come Friday, maybe you do need the break. Maybe,
Yeah.
and that's also just as important. So being able to see all of those things as neutral and not that you constantly have to be working at yourself, constantly having to do 1% better than the day before. When we do that, we run out of percentages in 100 days. Like, you don't have to always keep going at such a fast pace. Like, we're allowed to slow down and just exist.
Yeah, and it's just as productive as the work. That slowing down. I think we're
It is
starting
the
to
work
grasp. It is
sometimes,
the
you know.
work. Like
Mm.
it's sometimes
Yeah.
we see rest as unproductive, but I always say rest is very productive and it's mandatory. Like it's a requirement. You don't earn it from doing so much and now I can finally, chill out. It's like you need to chill out during the process or you're gonna burn out. So, and I know you see a lot of people, with sort of that burned out from in that burnout state from just going so hard all the time. I do have a question though about a lot of the work that you do to help women specifically start to heal their relationship with their bodies. There's a nuance that I don't think we discuss enough because, we all exist in different bodies. And I think, we talked about this on an earlier episode around body positivity and all of that. And it's like, it's really cute until you're in a body that fits outside of the norm. It's like, oh, we're body positive around here if you got a little roll or a little cellulite. But if you're in a very large body, if you are, just a super fat body, anything that looks like a little bit too far from like, okay, it's almost like, all right, we extended the ideal beauty for you guys enough. We're not going that far, right? So if you live in a body that's outside of that, somewhat acceptable range, this whole process of like healing your body image and making peace with your body and coming home to your body, it is like 10 times harder. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And I know that you do this work, regularly. So I would love if you would, discuss the differences and the nuance in navigating that whole process around improving your body image when your body does not fit near or close to the norm or the average, if you will.
You are right that it is harder. I think that grief is such a big part of this work for anyone in any size body who's starting to heal. There's so much grief around accepting that, for your whole life you've been lied to and taught these really
Right.
harmful things, and that is really upsetting, and it comes with a lot of anger and a lot of sadness. And sometimes there's grief around, wow, I spent 18 years of my life working toward this really unsustainable and unrealistic goal. For what? For who? For why? That comes with grief. Sometimes there's grief around just letting go of the idea of this ideal or dream body that so many of us fantasize around, and we, set each new goal working toward that thing. So it kind of becomes an imprinted image in our brains. Letting go of that and recognizing that's just not the body that I'm meant to have also comes with grief. When you live in a larger body or you recover into a larger body, there's extra grief there. And there's grief around recognizing that this world isn't set up for you. And that really fucking sucks. And so a lot of the shame in messaging around what we're supposed to look like and, all of the diet culture-y things teach us that our bodies are wrong, or that we're wrong and we have to do something about it to fix it. So when I have a client who's in a larger body and they're doing all of this work and they try to get on an airplane and they're really upset that they don't fit comfortably or maybe not at all, their go-to conditioned response is, see, I have to fix this. I have to do something about it. But what I help people do is slow down. Let's take a break. Let's see what accommodations do exist. And if the accommodations exist for you to get there and to do the thing and to get where you want to go, great, we can make those adjustments. If they don't exist, or even if they do and it's still, less accommodating, less accessible, that's a systemic issue.
It is.
That's not a you issue. That's not a your body issue. And it's not something you need to fix. You're allowed to be mad about it. In fact, I hope you are. And so then we work through that grief and we work through releasing that anger in healthier ways rather than internalizing them and letting them build up into all of this shame and these other uncomfortable emotions. And sometimes for some clients, then that leads to, okay, what can I do about this? Can I write a letter? Can I reach out to someone? Can I do some advocacy work? Can I learn more about the social justice system and how these systems are working against certain people? And that's such a productive way to release that anger. It's not everyone's way. So we work through what all of those things look like and how it fits best for the client. But there is a lot of extra grief and difficulty when your body doesn't fit, again, what society has deemed as acceptable.
That was, I think a lot of people really need to hear that, because I hear you saying, like, you got to release that out of you. And especially when it comes to society's accommodating, right? Release the energy by doing something about it or accepting that it's just not fair, but not blaming yourself for it. Like, that's so big. And can I just say, did Jess just drop like the kindest sounding F-bomb I've ever heard on this podcast? That was incredible.
Sucks. It was beautiful.
That was beautiful.
Jess, a good soundbite.
One thing you've been kind of subtly hinting at and saying over and over again is a lot of focus on the inner critic, right? This inner dialogue inside of our minds that tends to be the one that's making us feel bad about ourselves. And I got one more for you, all right? One more for you from the social media.
He's all over
feed.
your social media.
Right? So for almost 2 decades, I didn't believe I was worthy of the same love I so freely gave to everyone around me. And I think as women, especially as quote unquote the caregivers, right? I think it's so common for everyone to have an expectation that you're supposed to show up for everyone else, make sure everyone else is taken care of, and then if there's anything left over at the end, you can have a little pittance, right? So like, how did you make that transition for yourself? And what advice do you have to people that are struggling with that right now?
A lot of work. A lot of work. It's interesting because there are days where I feel like our society teaches us to only think about ourselves and to, stomp on other people to get where we want to go. But in the same breath, we're also taught that we don't deserve to be put up front. We don't deserve to be at the top of our own list. That's selfish, or it's arrogant. And so we get these mixed messages that are just really confusing.
Yeah.
And being able to, I go back a lot to value work and really recognizing what's important for you. And sure, you can be a kind, loving, compassionate, and generous person and take care of other people. You're going to do that a hell of a lot easier if you're taking care of yourself first. And it's such a cheesy concept, but when you're on the airplane and they're going through the emergency steps, you have to put your mask on first. You can't help anyone else if you're drowning or you're running out of breath or you've run out of energy. So it's kind of counterproductive to not put yourself first. We have to do that. It's just really digging at all of the reasons why we haven't and forgiving ourselves for that. And then just taking the step, holding our breath with some courage and trying it out and not judging ourselves for doing something that's difficult.
I'm so glad you said that. I do a lot of work around self-care, especially with women, and I've recently had some conversations around self-care. I believe self-care is for you. Like it's for you to care for you because you are the only person that can take care of you. But also self-care was never like this term coined for like selfishness and oh, it's just my life and me. Self-care really is about feeding back into reciprocal community care, because as women or people, just humans, being caregivers and having people we're responsible for or people that we're in community and relationship with, there are some responsibilities to help and to care for other people, but we 100% can't do that if we don't care for ourselves. So self-care is a great benefit to us, but it's a greater benefit to the people in our circles and in our spaces, because now we have the capacity and bandwidth. And when you are, I always do the analogy, you can't pour from an empty cup, but we do, right? Or we go fill up a little bit and then we go give it away. But when you're like really overflowing because you're pouring into yourself so much, you're getting fed from your sources of, spiritual growth and enhancement, emotional, physical, whatever you're doing for yourself, taking good care of yourself, you're getting fed and you're overflowing. And then let's say something happens in your life and you're starting to get low. Well, the people that you've cared for are another part of your source to pour back into you. And then when you're overflowing again, you can pour into others. So that, self-care to me is way bigger than like, the way capitalism has like taken it and made it like, oh, go to the spa. Beautiful. That's great. But really we're caring for ourselves in deeper, more meaningful ways so that we have the emotional and spiritual and physical capacity to continue caring for ourselves and to help and care for other people. So I just wanted to highlight that part because I think self-care is so important, and so it's such a misnomer in our society for sure. Definitely.
I love everything you said, and I would love to also bring it back to one of the first questions you asked about how do you communicate your needs to your partner, and when you're able to name those things and show up for yourself, it takes away so much resentment. I work with
Absolutely.
so many people, and this was me, where, we want people to read our minds. We want people to just know so that we don't have to say it, because if I say it, that makes me vulnerable and I could be rejected and I
Yep.
could be met with criticism, and I don't like that. That feels yucky. So I'm just going to keep it inside, and I'm going to hope really, really, really hard that he just knows and he just gets it.
Oh, really, really hard.
Hey,
Isn't that code for expectations? I don't know.
absolutely.
Yeah. Unspoken
Yeah.
expectations, maybe.
Listen,
Oh man.
we've all been there.
Oh man.
It
Yeah.
feels good to have someone, feel like they know you and they anticipate your needs. And it's really cute. And, if you grew up in the 90s and you watched the rom-coms and listened
Disney
to the love
movies.
songs, that's what they did. So
Yeah.
coming back to reality, you're right. We have to communicate our needs and recognize them to even be able to communicate them, which you definitely talked about. So, yeah.
You've mentioned something a couple times that I would love to highlight, and maybe you can help us tie it together. But you've said the word grief, and
Yeah.
I'm hearing this grief of like grieving for the way that we've allowed ourselves to treat ourselves, and it's almost like a tool for self-compassion in the way that you're describing it. And I think that's so important because when we get stuck in the whole, like, I can't believe I've been treating myself like that. And then it's just like more criticism pours on top of it. We get stuck in a hypervigilant loop. And it's like we never end up at the place of like, actually, hang on, like I got to show up for myself more, you know? So can you speak to that part of the process that you noticed with your clients?
Yeah, so a lot of it is grief and working through those stages of grief, the denial, the depression, the anger, all of those. I like to take it a step further too when I have clients who are, deeper into this work, and I call it body forgiveness. And when people first hear that term, they think, oh, like you're letting your body apologize to you. No, 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 no. Our bodies haven't done anything wrong. That's kind of the whole point of this. Instead, we're forgiving ourselves for, when I recognized my own experience, I had to go back and realize, wow, I really did think that what I was doing was healthy because I was taught that I was. I was taught that working toward being smaller meant working toward being healthier. Over the course of 18 years, I didn't realize how much damage I did to my body and to the relationship I had with her. And so that caused a lot of mistrust. I lost my ability to recognize when I was hungry and when I was full. And so rebuilding that requires rebuilding trust. And when we can give ourselves the permission to be wrong, given I did the best that I had with the knowledge that I had, and I messed up, and that's okay. I can really sit with that and accept that, and now I can do better with what I know now. Giving ourselves that permission gives the space for your body to start learning, also slowly, also gradually, that she can trust you too. And that comes with action. So for years, maybe she tried to tell you she was hungry and you ignored it, or you popped in a piece of gum because that's what you saw them do on The Biggest Loser, or you distracted yourself with reading a magazine, whatever it was. Now it's implementing, okay, I need to stop in the middle of this email because my priority now is me. And I'm going to go and I'm going to get a snack. And I'm going to come back and the email's not going to go anywhere. And I can sit down and I can complete it. But I'm going to show up for my body and I'm going to teach her that she can trust me again. And that, along with the grief, allows your body to forgive you. And then you're not working against each other anymore. You're finally starting to work together.
That is so beautiful. I've never heard the concept of body forgiveness and presented in that way. But yeah, it's the trust. It's the trust in it's like because we separate ourselves, mind and body, so easily, it's reconnecting and establishing that trust between the two to where I can trust you, you can trust me, I'm here for you, you're here for me. And it's just such a beautiful analogy to like the most important relationship we have, which is the one with ourselves. So thank you for
And
sharing
the
that. I
longest
really
one you'll
appreciate
ever
that.
have.
The
Yeah.
longest one you'll ever have, the most meaningful and most impactful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
How intentional is the way that you're communicating about this when you use words like her, right? I know this is interesting to me because you also, going back to that quote, like, I didn't believe I was worthy of the same love I freely gave to everyone around me. And so if we take our body as a little bit of distant from maybe that self-critical mind, do you find that as an easier way for people to have that self-love and compassion?
Language is such a huge part of the work that I do. I don't hear many therapists talk about this, and so it's something that I try to touch on every conversation that I have in some way. And when we can be intentional about the word choices we use, we can be more honest with ourselves. An example I like to use is I hear the phrase a lot in this space that says, like, you don't have to love your body in order to, find body healing or body acceptance. And I like to challenge the word love there because we use love in such a different way in every other context.
Yeah.
Let's just say what we actually mean. What you're saying is you don't have to be attracted to your body to have body acceptance. And so when we can just make those small little tweaks and be honest with ourselves, it can shine so much more light onto what we're actually thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
When we call our body it really does a separation of it's this other thing apart from me. It's this inanimate object. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have it can't be hurt, that kind of thing. But when we put our own pronoun to it, whatever that might be for you, it gives it some humanness. It allows us to connect more empathically, more compassionately, and start to treat your body like you would treat a loved one, like you would treat another person. And so I'm overly intentional about language and just gently challenging people like, I heard you say this word, but what did you actually mean? And it can really just shed so much light onto what we're actually thinking.
We can't tell that you're overly intentional with language. I'm just kidding. This has been such a great conversation, and you've shared so much wisdom. I did have one more thing I would love to unpack, because I've also heard this echoed as a theme whenever I keep trying to pass that, like, how do you get people to find out what they need? I hear you going back to values, right? And values, again, there's always going to be someone who's like, okay, well, what are your values? Well, I don't know, right? So, like, help our listeners understand. Like, if they just can't find a way to connect, like, where do you actually start with that? Like, what questions do you ask people to help them learn what their values are, or maybe like guess what their values might be, right? So I'm curious what you do to get people started on that journey.
I hand my clients a literal chart.
I love that.
My telehealth clients, I share a screen and there's a chart of like 150 common values. The clients I have in person, I have a deck of cards. And each one has a value on it with an example to kind of let us dig a little bit deeper. And depending on the client, this is mostly with my coaching clients, I'll share that when I was so deep in diet culture and trying to change my appearance, my priority was appearance. It was looking a certain way. It was external validation about what I looked like. And not until I really acknowledged that it was at the top of my list was I able to then shift it to where I wanted it to be and where I needed it to be. And being able to see it, I mean, I talk about values literally every day in some capacity, and I still need a list in front of me to really conceptualize like how many things exist out there and which ones are important to me and which ones aren't. And so I'll have clients just black out with some Sharpie the ones that that's just not on my list, and that's okay. And then we'll highlight the ones that mean something. And then we use intentionality, and always with grace and compassion. What do you want this list to look like? In what order do you want it to be? And how can we, again, gradually, slowly shift your appearance and what you look like down further and further and further? Because it's not a bad thing. It's not unallowed. That can be on your list, but what are the things that are truly more important to you? What are the things that are gonna get you where you want to go? Can happiness, can honesty, connection, authenticity, can those things be higher up that list? So it's really just like looking at them on paper in some way and organizing them based off of how you live your life and how you want to.
I absolutely love this because it gives people a starting point. I never forget going to therapy over a decade ago for the first time, and it was a couples therapy, and my partner was like, he doesn't feel. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then the therapist's like, how does that make you feel? And I was like, what do you mean, right? And she slides the list of emotions and definitions over. And I'm like, had this laminated list that I had to read off of. And now I consider myself someone who's very in touch with his feelings, but it started with something like, I can't even get in touch with any of that. I don't even know what this means. And so I really appreciate you giving somebody a place to start. And the second piece of that was, it's really easy to know what we don't value. And sometimes it's really hard to know what we do. So taking out that Sharpie and just let's get rid of all the stuff that we just know we don't value, and we just shrink the list, and it makes life a lot easier. So, what a beautiful thing to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.